And you know, like in the old days when you go, hey, you need something? I got a guy. I was that guy.
You were the guy.
But I would hang around. Yeah, and I would hang around in the most affluent places I possibly could. And so all of a sudden I started working for them. Not only was I working my database, but I now had access to their database. We're going from, can you get me into this club, to literally, and I'm not lying, can you get me married in the Vatican by the Pope?
Yo, welcome to another episode of the Founder Podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Steve Sims. Steve is an incredible entrepreneur with some awesome stories. I'm super excited for this episode. Steve is the author of two incredible books, Bluefishing and Go for Stupid, which is, we're going to have to go a little bit deeper into that title. So super excited to have Steve. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, it's exciting to be here. We're in the beautiful Spotify podcast studio. Yeah. Have you ever been here before?
Driven past it many times, never actually been in. Haven't been blessed.
Yeah, pretty cool. So
it is.
Love being here, but more importantly, love being here with you. Excited to get to know you, tell your story, and do all the good things. So, family man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Married. How long have you been married?
Forever. We literally met, I think I was 17, she was 16. So, just literally forever.
Awesome. That sounds like me and my wife. Yeah.
Perfect.
We've been dating since I was 16 and been married for 18 years. And you have how many children?
I have 3 kids, 2 dogs, loads of motorbikes, and a fair amount of whiskey.
Yeah. And clearly not originally here from LA.
No, you guessed, didn't you? No, I'm a East London boy that just started a journey to try and surround myself with affluent, successful people, so I would stop being the broke-ass biker that I was.
Yeah, well, you got the good biker look, but then we were joking, kind of reading through your bio, the fact that you're from London, and I'm like, of course, he's in the concierge business, like creating incredible. Like, you can't be in that business unless you have a British accent. You gotta.
It's funny, but they just they may expect a British accent, but they don't expect me. 245 pound of ugly is not commonly what people want turning up on their doorstep asking for their black card. But I think funny enough, that actually worked for me because we were in the late 80s and 90s where there was an air of precociousness when people had money.
Right.
If you had money, people would go, oh, good afternoon, sir. Oh, how are you? There's a standing joke that the richer you become, the more British you become. Yeah. There was this kind of like air that came along with money. But the fact is, if you think about everyone that has money now, they came from basically not a lot of it.
Right.
So they know what it's like to have a real conversation, real interaction. So in which case they can see through the fake BS very, very quickly.
Right.
So while I didn't know how I came across, I was very ignorant to the way that this was bowling into your world. It actually became very refreshing for a lot of my clients, and I ended up working with the most powerful and influential people in the world. And if we want a name drop, we can do it. Elon Musk, Richard Branson.
Oh, I love the name drops.
It's all out there. But, far more powerful, far more impactful people that you've never heard of. So I was very fortunate.
That's so awesome. So tell us what is exactly, so I know what you do, but I'd love you to tell the audience, like, what has been your gift to humanity?
Wow, I don't know if it's been a gift to humanity. It's been a gift to a lot of big people's checkbooks. I was a broke bricklayer, and I wanted to surround myself with rich people. So I tried getting into affluent jobs and failing. Ended up being the doorman of a nightclub in Hong Kong.
And backing up, from what I understand, you dropped out of school at a very young age.
Dropped out is an understatement. At the age of 15, I was asked to leave, and I was kind of like, I think I was in the no hope pile.
So tell me about that. You're 15 and asked to leave. I mean, you must have just been a pain in the butt.
Wasn't every entrepreneur?
Yes.
We were the ones that kept on going, excuse me, miss, I don't understand that.
Right.
Until we were ridiculed by the other kids. But as entrepreneurs, we were always kind of like, well, why has it got to fit in that box? Why is that the only option?
Oh, yeah.
And now we revere people like Elon Musk that doesn't even see a box.
Right.
So I was very quizzical.
Yeah.
And, of course, being a big lad, it was coming across as a troublemaker. And I was like, no, I don't understand. Tell me. And, of course, so I was classed from a very early age that I had anger issues. But I had confusion issues. And that was the thing. So I constantly asked, why does it have to be done? Why me? Why not that? And there was only ever one answer, which never sank well for me. Surely there's more than one answer, one way to do something. So, it got to, in England, you leave school when you're 16 and you go to college.
Yes.
So it's a slightly different system. But I was very young in my year, and I was 15. And they literally said, there's no point in finishing the year and don't apply for college.
Oh, wow.
And that was my school counsellor that said that. So they sent me home with a letter to my parents. My dad owned a bricklaying firm, which consisted of him and his uncle and my granddad. And they went, right, you start on a building site tomorrow. And I was like, damn, is that my life?
This sucks.
Is that it? Yeah, exactly. And there was a very pivotal moment that I spoke about in Bluefishing, where I went up on the building site, and there was my dad, my uncle, my cousins, and my granddad. And I could see my life. My teen,
right.
My
just
cousins.
The progression of the right.
I was like 16, 17 years old. My cousin was 19. One of them was 26. My granddad was in his 80s. And I remember running down to my granddad during the tea break time and squeezing a big mammoth of a man. He was like Hagrid, just a huge guy. And I remember running up to him and going, Granddad, did you ever think you'd be doing this at your age? Now, of course, that's not a very polite thing to ask an 8-year-old that pretty much has screwed up his life to get to having to work just to survive. He didn't even look at me. He literally blew into his tea and he said, if you don't quit today, you'll be me tomorrow.
Oh, those are probably the best words you could ever hear.
I quit that day.
Yeah.
I quit that day and I knew I had to leave. Sadly, my granddad died probably about 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
Never got. I swear he's probably up causing some shit in heaven now and just waiting for me for an old fashioned. But I'm gonna give him a hug when I'm up there to say thank you. But I believe that there's many pivotal moments I've gone through, but that was the first one.
Right.
That was the one that went, hang on a minute, we don't know about tomorrow. Right. And if we waste it, that baby's going to come real fast.
Yeah.
And
coming from a guy that's 80, like obviously he's full of wisdom.
Yeah.
And you're
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, he knows something.
He knows a few things.
He's been around a while, and hopefully a few things he says. Yeah.
And that was it. I just knew that I was a curious kid. I didn't have Instagram to validate how inadequate my life was. I didn't have YouTube to convince me that, I wasn't the guru. So, we didn't have those things then.
Right.
But as an entrepreneur inside, you've got that curiosity married with that aggravation. Mm-hmm. What's next? How can I be better? How can I do it? And I had that, and I went out on a journey to try and find it. And as I say, I failed at a ton of jobs, learned a million jobs that I couldn't do, only to end up on the front door of a nightclub because I'm big and ugly.
Big guy.
Perfect. Look at him. He
felt
can slap
like it.
people.
Yeah,
natural fit. So they threw me on the door of a club, but I got a PhD of human psychology there.
Really?
I got to see how, and we've all been there, those people that are full of it, how they act.
Right.
Those people that have really made it, how they act.
Right.
Those people that are curious. So I recognized it very early on.
How old were you at this time?
I was in my early 20s now.
And were you still in the UK at this
No,
point?
I'd moved to Hong Kong because there was a chance of a job.
This was in Hong Kong.
I know.
Wow.
There was a chance of a job in Hong Kong, which I took, and I lasted 2 days.
What was the job?
Can you believe it? A stockbroker. They were employing trainee stockbrokers, and I
2 days.
I managed to talk my way into getting a free ticket over there and a free apartment into this stockbroking apprenticeship. And they fired me after 2 days because I couldn't even add up without using my fingers and toes. So they fired me. But it didn't squash the curiosity.
Right.
And I managed to just start interacting with these people in the club. And like you go into a restaurant and you get the manager walk around the restaurant going, hey, how are you? Are you having a good night tonight? And they do that. I was doing that in the club. And the manager wasn't. And the manager was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just making sure everyone's okay. But I was becoming this almost maitre d' hospitality. But the point is, I wanted to talk to affluent people.
Right.
So I'd go up to them and I'd be like, because I was on the door, I knew where all the clubs were. And I was like, are you going to the new club Thursday? And they were like, no, I didn't know. let me see if I can pull a few strings just to get them to talk to me.
Just working deals.
Yeah, so I went from getting people into nightclubs to working for Ferrari in Monaco at the Grand Prix. I worked for the Elton John Oscar.
So I mean, how does
years.
that happen, right? Like, I mean, it's not just you do this twice and then one day you're working for Ferrari at the Grand Prix. Like, what were like some of your big breaks that like got you these connections, or was it just one little connection and one little connection that led to that?
That one after one, it was a stepping stone. It was an inch by inch. Someone wants to get into a club. All of a sudden, I know the club owner. That club owner knows that restaurant. That restaurant spent sponsoring an award show. Can you help us with the award show? It was just.
And what year was this that you were
So
doing?
it all kicked off in the early 90s.
Okay.
And I suppose.
I mean, this is pre-cell phone.
Oh,
so I mean,
God, yeah.
I mean, you've got what, like a little black book that you're
Yep.
taking notes and,
Yep.
and putting people's names down,
Yep.
studying them at night. Like, what were like some of your best practices in those early days when you didn't have this nice smartphone?
But that was the thing, studying the people.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy to meet someone and you go, look, they've got a brown belt and black shoes.
Yeah.
Are they paying attention to those details? Is there any roughness about their outfit? Is there any roughness about their demeanor? Is there any kind of like, inconsistencies within that
And
story?
who's teaching you these things? Is it all just coming natural for you?
Didn't we have that back? Like pretty much everyone in this room is older than Google.
Yeah.
Yep. So when we walked into a bar, you knew there were guys you would mess with and there were guys you wouldn't.
Right.
You just knew that. People call it the street smart.
Right.
But now we've diluted it and we now trust the Wi-Fi because hell, the Google doesn't lie to us. There's nothing wrong on Google,
True.
But the trouble is we trusted our gut back then and we don't now.
Right. There was way more intuition.
That was
right.
the thing.
And we actually paid attention to life where
And that's
instead
it.
of being buried in here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think paying attention's a muscle.
Right.
And I think the fact that when you start relying on your cell phone to give you all the gospel, you start losing the ability to trust your gut. Now, that gut and that
Powerful.
intuition is what is going to steer you. And if you stop using it, it's a muscle you're going to lose.
I really like that. I mean, and it's a muscle that most people have lost today.
And it is dying. We've got phones now that are there to keep us more connected, and we've never been more disconnected.
Right.
So, and we've just gone through COVID as well, which has basically alienated us from having a conversation. In fact, if you want to look like a criminal, if you want to get arrested, stand in a coffee shop or a bus stop or a tube station and strike up a conversation with the person next to you.
Right.
It's almost alien now. They'll be like, what are you doing?
Who are you?
What?
Like, get back to your phone.
Yeah, but no, it's a weird old thing now. So
Right.
it's something that's dying, but we should never ignore the fact that as human beings, we're pack animals.
Yeah.
We like nothing more than connect with like-minded disruptors, people that do things differently, people that we can align with. We like this kind of car. We like this kind of motorbike. We like this kind of music. But we're in a world now where we're doing everything we possibly can to disconnect.
So
Kind of
true.
scary.
It is scary. It is scary. So you're going about this. How long are you working as a club bouncer or whatever?
So I was
you
a
are?
bouncer for probably about 2.5 years. Then I turned into, and I just started building up these things. I remember when I got do you remember this, the Palm Pilot?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God, I was
yeah.
like Steve Jobs. I had this Palm Pilot.
Yes.
I thought I was like WizKid.
Oh yeah.
And
I had a Palm Trio at one point.
Hey, you're fancy. You're fancy. I could tell that. And I would make notes in there. I'd make notes in there on the jewellery. I'd make notes on there on how well dressed they were. I'd make notes on. They go to a restaurant, they order a Negroni. Why a Negroni? Oh, I love Negroni. I'd make a little note. So I was constantly making, and I'd build up this database on people on a little black pad, and then in my Palm Pilot. And so I just became this fix-it. And like in the old days when you go, hey, you need something? I've got a guy. I was that guy.
You were the guy.
But I
The
would hang
connector.
around. Yeah, and I would hang around in the most affluent places I possibly could. And then those places would go, look, can you get people into our party? Can you get the right kind of people into my gala, my award show? And so all of a sudden I started working for them. Not only was I working my database, but I now had access to their database. So I was constantly working up and around. And of course, the requests I were getting were going from, can you get me into this club, to literally, and I'm not lying, can you get me married in the Vatican by the Pope?
Wow. Wow.
And just the requests were getting bigger.
So obviously, I mean, these came from all different types of things. One thing I've noticed, so I have several friends that are in, you would call them connectors, right? And they're really good. They know a lot of people or whatnot, but very few of them actually turn it into actual money.
Yeah.
Right? Like they hang around fancy crowds.
Yeah.
But they end up being the poorest guy in the crowd because all they did was connect. Like, at what point did you actually transition to making it where it actually started producing funds for you?
Day one.
Day one.
Day one.
And how did you go about that?
I'm a great believer. If they don't pay, they don't pay attention. Okay, and if I give it to you for free, you value it as that.
Right.
So when I use the example when I said to you at the beginning that I would meet a couple of people in the club that were affluent and that I wanted to connect with, and I'd walk up to them and I'd be like, "Hey, Chris, are you going to the new club?" And they'd be like, "No, I'm not." And I'd be like, "Let me see if I can make a call." And then I would come back to her and go, "Look, they're opening up on Thursday. I pulled a few strings. I want to look after the doorman, so it's a couple of $100 each." Straight off the bat. They'd be like, "Fine." And I realised.
So then you would take a piece of that and give it to the doorman?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, always. You know,
Nice.
look after your people,
Right.
look after yourself. And I realised that people are happier to pay for access than potentially getting turned away.
Right.
No one wants to be lining up and getting sold. Not tonight. They don't want that.
Right.
So I became that person that you could actually pay to get what you wanted.
Pay to play.
And yeah, I was I never had fee phobia.
Yeah.
You know, I was always like, yeah, that's going to cost you 500. That's going to cost you a couple of grand. Yeah, you're looking at about 1.3 million for that, you know, and I'm going to take 50% up front to start getting it going. So I never had a problem with that.
So, like, for example, you talked about getting married by the Pope in the Vatican or whatnot. Did you make that happen?
I did.
Okay. And how much did that cost that person?
I can't tell you.
Oh, you don't have to tell us who. We just got to know how much.
Yeah. No,
because maybe I want to get remarried to my wife by the Pope in the Vatican.
It was held in St. Peter's, and then the blessing was held by the Pope. But we're not allowed to discuss who. We never discuss the clients.
Yeah. Well, that's
we
fine.
never discuss the donations and the financials.
So
and here's the funny thing: when you get into that world, the last thing you ever discuss is the financial. It's like you buying a car and then being surprised you've got to pay for the gas. You know, I remember I was working with Elton John for about 8 years.
Yeah.
And
Someone came up to him during the party, and I was stood next to him. Very, very affluent gentleman came up and he went, "Hey, I'm having a party at my house. How much would it cost you to come and perform?" And Elton turned around and said, "I'm actually busy then," and walked off. The guy hadn't even given him the date. And when I caught up with Elton, he turned around and said, "No one buys me." You know, the last thing you want to do is become a prostitute.
Put a price on something.
You know, I'm not a commodity.
Right.
So when you're talking to people like that, you've got to work out what's going to make them want to do this.
Right.
You know there's going to be a financial aspect. You know there's going to be a pay to play near the end. But what's the reason that they're going to want to be involved in that event, that experience, that transaction, that story, that memory, whatever? That's what you've got to focus on. And today we're far more concerned on completing a transaction. How much is it going to cost me?
Right.
Rather than, hey, I got something that is dynamite and I'd love you to be involved in it. Should I tell you what it is? That kind of thing. People are missing out on that element.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you don't have to tell me about the Pope, but you got to tell me, like, what was the biggest transaction you ever did?
Oh,
that you were able to take
monetary?
home? Monetarily, that you took.
I don't like talking about the money.
I get it.
But I will tell you of an experience that I created that was fun.
Okay.
You know, and I'll squirm my way into that. I had a client that contacted me, and here's a big lesson for anyone listening. People say to me, "Have you ever not been able to get anything?" Okay, and the answer is arrogantly no.
Oh,
and the reason the answer is arrogantly no is because I've never even attempted to give you what you asked for. Because people always ask for what they think they can get.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you give them that, you've just completed a transaction. And isn't that what Amazon does? You know? So people would come to me and they'd be like, "Hey, I'd love to go to this concert." Great. Let me see what I can do. And then I'd get you backstage. You know, I would always go above and beyond. And one of the classic ones, and again, it's in the book, was I had people say to me, "Look, you know, I want to have this amazing dining experience in Florence. You know, I really want to show off to my future mother-in-law and father-in-law. Can you make something happen?" Absolutely. I ended up taking over the Accademia della Galleria, which is the museum in Florence that houses Michelangelo's David. the most iconic statue in the world.
Yes.
I took it over from 5 o'clock in the evening till 2 o'clock in the morning. 9 o'clock at night, I had a table of 6 set up at the feet of David, and I had the clients brought in to have dinner at the feet of the most iconic statue in the world. Now, that's good, yes?
That's pretty good.
Couldn't stop there, though.
Oh.
So we had a string quartet and a pianist there, so I said, look, during the main course, I'm going to have a local entertainer come in and serenade you while you're digging into your pasta. So when it got time for them to start that main course, I let them know that I wanted to bring in the entertainer. They approved it. They said, certainly, Steve, bring him in. I brought in Andrea Bocelli to serenade them during their pasta. So that's the kind of thing that I did.
Those
of
are the
course,
experiences.
nobody knew that was the level that I played at. And of course, when you do that, they become addicted. And they're like, what can you do for Monaco? What can you do for, this? What can you do for my barbecue? What can you do for this amazing Sunday? Just because it's a bloody Sunday. So I became that, and I carried that on for like 25 years until Forbes did, I suppose the word should be beautiful, but they did an 8-page expose on the most connected man in the world, and they called me the real-life Wizard of Oz.
I love that.
It was kind of nice, but up until about halfway through the day, it killed about 50% of my business.
Oh, really?
Well, all the powerful people that I was dealing with around the world
Didn't want to be outed that you were their guy.
because they wanted to tell their mates, this was the reason I played drums with Guns N' Roses. This was the reason I drove a Formula One car in Monaco. This was
They wanted you to be their connection that they were.
that connection, but they
Hey, I
wanted
got
me in
this-
the background. And
Right.
I was very happy being in the background.
Right.
I was very chuffed, just no one knowing who I was.
Right. And then all of a sudden you're getting inundated with.
I'm getting pictures of me with Branson and everything. And so all of a sudden people were like, hang on, is that the guy you used for that story you told at the So I lost a lot of business. But funny enough, within about 2 weeks, Simon and Schuster contacted me and they said, can you do a book? And they wanted me to do a book exposing all of the powerful people that I had worked with and what they had. And I said, look,
We
I've
ain't
dealt
gonna
with
do
some
that.
colourful people. If I expose that, I'll be dead before cocktail hour. So they said, well, can you do how a bricklayer from London ends up doing this? And so we wrote that book, not knowing if it'd work. And that was 8 years ago.
This was Bluefishing.
Bluefish, it came out as a bestseller and got translated, I think, 8 different languages.
How many books have you sold?
Oh, I don't know. I think 200 and something thousand. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's great.
We couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And of course, here's the dumb thing. I love you, Simon and Schuster. I should say that. I front loaded. So I'm not making anything out of books now. So they're very happy. But I really didn't think anyone would take this book seriously because it's simple.
So you got paid out up front and didn't get a piece on the back end.
I got a piece, but it's not exactly
Yeah.
keeping me in old fashions, that's for sure.
So, all right, moving on from the financial aspect, not focusing there. The real question is, how did you make these things happen? And what were some principles that can be taught for other people to go and do? Maybe not dinner at the feet of Michelangelo or David.
Why not?
I mean,
That's the first mistake.
no.
That's the first mistake. People go,
Don't think big
maybe
enough."
not this, but think big. The whole reason you mentioned it earlier about the second book, Go for Stupid.
Yes.
Okay, I've been using that title since 2003
yes.
because someone would come to us and they'd be like, "Hey, I'd love to do this," and we'd be like, "Great," and then we'd sit around with everyone and we'd go, "Hey, how can we make this stupid?" Now, here's the thing. Think about it. It's just happened to you. And so I've seen it, and anyone watching this on video will pick up on this. If I ask you what your goal is, and you tell me what your goal is, and then I say to you, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to make it impossible. We're going to break through the impossible. We're going to make the impossible possible. You get very feisty, don't
Yes.
you? You get very gritty, and you get very rigid. But if I say to you, well, that sounds fine, but how can we make that goal stupid? You're going for 10 million. Screw it. Let's go for 50. Anyone that's watching this video can see your face. You're now smiling. Why? Because you become a child.
Right.
When you play with things, you don't lose energy. But when you're fighting things, you do.
Absolutely.
So when you're going for the impossible, it's all just kind of, let's break it. But when you're playing with a concept, when you're playing with an idea, when you're imagining things, you become a child. And childs have no parameters. They have no boxes again.
Powerful.
All right, so that's what we used to do. So the first thing is, if you want to do something,
Go for stupid.
make it bigger. Make your goal laughable.
It's interesting. I downplayed whatever else somebody else would do, right? But the reality is, I believe that, right? Like as an entrepreneur, I've gone and built companies that done close to $250 million a year, and done stupid things that younger me would have never thought possible. And it was all because I did dream big, and so I agree with you that the principle applies to everything, that you have to go for stupid.
Well, there's two things, and you asked me what was one of the tactics. The first thing is to go for stupid, and the second one is know your arena. Now, the downside is, and this is a test for anyone that's listening to this podcast. You're in your environment. You're at your coffee table. You're in your bar, and you turn around and you address your mates, and you go, "Well, look, I've been looking at this, but I want a $250 million company. As one of them, I want 3 of them."
Right.
And I'm going to franchise them off, and I'm probably going to launch a TV show on it, and I'll probably even write a book on it as well, so other people can follow my ups and downs and my lessons of my education. When you're telling your crowd, your community, your goals, are they looking at you like a deer in headlights, or are they smiling and supporting? The downside is 9 times out of 10 today we're scared of being laughed at.
Right.
And we start telling our people, those people that we've grown up with, our goals and dreams. They're looking at us like, "You've gone mad.
Crazy. You're a bricklayer."
Yeah, what the hell do you know? You're going to fail everything. And what do? We then go, "Yeah, I'm sorry about it. Someone must have spiked my drink. I'm back,
Apologize
boys.
for thinking big.
Sorry about exactly. You apologize. You're in the wrong arena. Now, I guarantee you would not be where you were if you were in that arena. Yep. You surround yourself with people that push you and challenge you. I remember having a conversation with Jay Abraham. You know Jay Abraham?
Oh, yeah.
He actually lives just down the road from him.
Oh, awesome.
So I was having dinner with him one night, and I had this brilliant idea. Absolutely an epiphany moment of how we could make millions with little effort and energy within like about 10 months. And I went down to Jay, and I went, "Jay, I want a picture." And he was like, "Come on down." And I pitched him on this thing. And at the end of this pitch, me, proud as punch, first ever PowerPoint presentation I had ever done in my life. And I was because I love Jay. He's a good friend, but also he's Jay Abraham, you know? And I'm like, "So, Jay, what do you think?" And he just looked at me and started rubbing his chin. And I'm thinking, is this a good sign? Is it a bad sign? And I went, "What's wrong?" And he went, I'm a little bit concerned. And I'm like, "Why?" He went, "Well, knowing you, I was just expecting more."
Oh.
I was like, damn. I don't know if there could have been a more upsetting statement.
Oh,
and I was like,
man.
"What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, with your effort, your energy, you put all of this into place."
I thought you would go for $1 billion.
And we realized that I'd actually sold myself short. And we actually ended up dissecting that, bringing it down to like 1 or 2 elements of it and franchising it off and then getting a piece off of them doing it, you know? But the downside was we do sell ourselves short. We need the environment.
So you did go and do something with that.
We did. I think we probably completed maybe the second paragraph of the first page of a 60-page document. Came up with this concept, found a company that could do it. I gave them the deal to do it, took a top slice, and we were happy. And we didn't even do anything.
That's awesome.
But the point is today, you need to make sure you're in the environment of people that are not going to laugh at you. They're going to cheer you. They're going to support you. But also they're going to challenge you. They're going to be like, "Is that really the best that you could do?" That statement of Jay's was the best statement he could have ever made.
Yeah.
It saved me a lot of anyone else would have been, "I'm with you, Steve. How can I invest in you?" And then we would have had a problem for a year. We'd have made the money, but how much effort would it have taken?
Oh, yeah.
So you've really got to make sure you're in the right room, and then you've got to think big.
That's remarkable. I think that's like one of the biggest bombs that have ever been dropped on the podcast.
Well, there you go. I'm done. Thanks for playing.
Let's go, man.
I'll be off.
I mean, we'll call it 25 minutes. No, man. So that's awesome. So those are the 2 main principles behind your second book.
Those are the 2 main principles behind my life.
Okay.
I realized that when I was I had this anger and this frustration in me that I wanted more out of life. The people that I was around were trying to calm me down. Well, why should they should be letting me go. They should be like opening the door. Get out, boy. And so I realized that my environment, you've heard the whole statement about, hey, you put a little shark in a fish tank and it'll always grow to the size of that fish tank. That's us.
Right.
And we're in a society now where, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but we just went through COVID.
Yes.
And COVID was a period where apparently we couldn't connect. During this period of, lack of connection, apparently, we invented two cultures. The gotcha society and the cancel culture. In a period where we couldn't talk to each other, couldn't hang out, couldn't, drink and go to barbecues and stuff like that, we started having trolls going through the internet to find something that you had said that was inappropriate in 1983, and now we're going to cancel your career about it. We started infeeding, and that's terrible.
Right. It's interesting that you just brought up that during COVID, we apparently could not connect, right? It's funny because the early days of COVID were when I created some of my greatest connections and still did it in person.
Yeah.
Because everybody was under this mindset that you can't connect. And so I started reaching out to some of my big connections and be like, hey, come up to my cabin. Let's get away. Let's do something. Nobody else has got anything else going on. And I went and held a mastermind up at my cabin with I don't know if you Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
Alex Hormozy, Russell Brunson, Brooke Castillo, Alex's wife Layla was there. Oh man, they're just some incredible people. Yeah. They all had nothing else going on, and I was thinking bigger than what everybody else was thinking at that point.
Let's not skip over that. Yeah. Okay. Here's the dumb thing: we couldn't go out, nor could they.
Right.
At the beginning, I got on my phone. I've got a hit list, and every time I have a conversation with someone and someone mentions a name or something that I don't know, I make a little note of it, and I'll be like, it'll be good to go and meet that person. At one stage somewhere. So when COVID hit, I had this hit list. So I started reaching out to them. Do you know what? They weren't traveling. They weren't in a meeting. They weren't in your cabin.
Right.
So all of a sudden, I could get them. I got through that list in the first 3 months. That list had taken me 5 years.
Wow.
It had just been feeding it. And every time I'd, sorry, he's not taking me. Oh, he's busy. Oh, he's on it. He's working on the first 3 months. And here's another fact for you probably already know. The BBC did some research at the end of COVID. During the worst 2 years of the society, of economy, whatever you want to call it, the worst 2 years of humanity, there were over 5 million first-time millionaires registered.
Oh, I believe it.
It was the largest boom period of first-time millionaires ever. Not real estate, not oil, not stock market, not the NASDAQ, none of those times, none of the tech bubbles. This was the greatest birth of first-time millionaires because we saw an opportunity out of it. You did, I did.
Absolutely.
And it absolutely worked. And so many people did, and so many people didn't.
Yeah, it's crazy to think back like on COVID because in my business, we 4 months prior to COVID hitting, so we're talking November 2019, right?
Yep.
We launched, so we're in the solar industry, we launched our inside sales division, which is like remote sales from a computer. Just kind of luck of the draw, we decided to do this. 4 months later, COVID hits. We have a 25-man sales team built out inside that we're able to transition all of our outside sales guys into. And that, over the next 2 years, just absolutely boomed into a 300-man sales floor, right? And taking that from revenue of 32 million to 233 million, like it was remarkable, like the opportunity that type of stuff presents itself.
Have you ever? I've heard this called many different things. I've always called it the yellow car. I've heard other people call it different things, but you're in a garage. Or, we're in America, a garage.
Garage.
And you're in a garage and you're walking through a parking lot or something like that, and you see this car.
Yep.
And it's a weird color yellow.
Yes.
Green, blue, whatever. And you look at it and you think, I've never seen that color before. That's a weird-ass color. When you're driving down the highway that night, what's the only color car you can see?
Yellow, because you're looking for it.
Because your mind's been opened up to that, and now that's all you can see.
Right.
As entrepreneurs, we see opportunity. So when it's a bad stock market, when we're in the recession that we're in, which is a distraction, when we're in a political year, when we're in interest rates, when we're in COVID, we don't see the drama that the media want us to be saturated with. We see the yellow car. Right. We see the opportunity. So it doesn't surprise me that all of my friends are going, oh, COVID, that was brilliant. Bring it back.
Bring it back.
Every 5 years we want
I got to be
again.
with my family more and make more money.
Oh, my God. I had no... So I like traveling. I bitch about it and I moan about it. But I like traveling, I love traveling all over the planet. I love experiencing new cultures, but it can be a bind. And of course, when you've got kids, you can't travel as much. So you're now away from your family and stuff. And I was chatting with Tucker Max, and Tucker said probably one of the best things out of COVID. He said, I was now locked down with my wife, and he said, I knew I loved her, but I had no idea how much I liked her. Oh, nice. And, with my wife, you get on this hamster wheel of, I'm flying off here and I'll be back in. Let's go out for dinner and stuff like that. Now I'm not going anywhere. I'm not traveling. I've got her for the entire day. And guess what? The same thing the following day and the following day. It was such a beautiful time for our relationship.
Created incredible. That actually pivots into a question I had for you. So you've done all these remarkable things, right? You've facilitated incredible events and experiences and met the coolest people on earth. How has your wife played into that? Because you don't do that without an incredible supportive role. Like, how's your wife?
So the beautiful the beautiful thing is that both of us are quite introverted. We play extroverts very well when we need to. But I love riding around on a motorbike. I love sitting on my own in the garden, walking the dogs. We love that quiet period. So actually, when we're going to like a red carpet gala in Hollywood or something like that, that takes effort. But we know why we're doing it. And Claire loves the benefits that she gets from it. So she's very supportive. But we don't buy into the egotistical element of it. So it's not a case of, oh, there's Brad Pitt, let's go and get a picture and stuff like that. There's none of that. I worked for Elton for 8 years. And I we know the power of having a good photograph. We know the power, especially on social media today. But I got into such a communication with Elton that to have gone, hey, should we get a selfie, would have undermined the relationship. Right. And I remember quite a few times when he would actually get people running up to him when I'm next to him, and they'd be like, can I get a photograph? And he'd be like, yeah. And, he just had this demeanor about it, that he was being used for that photograph. So I never got it. Right. And I remember I think it was like 5-6 years in thinking, been with this guy every single year at the Oscar party, never once got a thing. My wife's met him, we've hung around, we've sat around with him and his husband, we've had drinks, never ever got a photograph. Some pictures, there's me in the background, but that's about it. And then one day he was having a photograph done with someone, and it was a professional shoot for one of his sponsors, and I was just there, and they went off, and he went, Sims, we've never got a photograph. Get in here, let's get. And that was the first time I ever got a photograph with the guy. And it was like 6 years into an 8 year career. So we've never really cared about that side.
Right.
So the hanging out with Andrea Bocelli in Florence and doing this in Venice or this in Japan and stuff like that. We've never really been interested in it. But being able to kind of walk the dogs on a Sunday morning, and just chatting. That's opulence to us. Being able to go to the fridge and knowing that there's going to be food in there. And if by any chance there isn't, we can book any restaurant we want to. Having those kind of choices, that is what opulence and affluence is to us. So we've always been very, very grounded. And I'm very grateful that, again, for anyone that can't see this, I'm 245 pounds of ugly. My wife's like 5'4", petite little thing, and scares the living crap out of me. So she's always been able to keep me grounded. And
she's a little piss fire.
Yeah. Every time I've kind of gone a little bit too, she's been like, "Whoa, let's have a chat," and she's been able to bring me back to where I should be.
That's so awesome. How old are your kids?
26, 22, and 18.
That's awesome. Where have they along your journey, how have they motivated you?
Whoa, that's an interesting question. Most of the time they've aggravated me. They're kids. And your kids never think you're cool.
Right.
You know,
Like, sure, Dad. Okay, whatever. You're hanging out with Elton John. That's
yeah. No, and I've actually spoken with other dads where they've gone, "You're never cool."
Yeah.
You know, I was with Gary Oldman a while back, and you know, his kids, and we were at this party, and this actor came in, and his kids flocked over to see that, and I'm like, don't you find that he's like, you're never cool enough for your kids? Mm-hmm. You know, that was Gary. So through the years, it's been very challenging to try and help them to actually try and open their wings and just to try things. You know, you want them to fail. But sadly, we're in a very tough world today where social media is quick to judge and laugh.
Yeah.
And so kids today, it's all about what do I look like? You know, who am I stood next to? What my carve is. And my 18-year-old, he's made some mammoth mistakes in some businesses that he's tried. And I've been very quick to go, you don't know the power that's in those mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and 9 times out of 10, there's only one element that was the mistake. The rest of it was a raving success.
Right.
You know, you've got to lean into that to realize how educated and how ahead of the curve you are. You know,
he's 18 and he's already having failed businesses. That's phenomenal.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
But of course, when you try and explain that to an 18-year-old, they're like, you know, but I lost all of my money. You can make more money.
Right.
You got that
Money comes and
education
goes.
at 18.
Right.
It's not like you got a mortgage to depend on because you're at home.
Right.
You know, now is when you make mistakes. When you got 3 kids and you're 45, that's not when you want to be making mistakes. So I'm glad to say that a lot of my kids have made some mammoth mistakes and they've learned from it. And I do believe that they've got some advantages in them. But that curiosity gene, that entrepreneurial gene that's in your body that makes you turn left when everyone turns right can quite often be a devastating and distracting moment and decision when everyone else is over there doing this and you're like, but what's over here? It can very much be a very much of an alone period as well. Because again, being an entrepreneur, we're the ones that have to make the decisions. Everyone else is looking at us, you know, and we have to be the one that makes the decisions, steer the course, steer the track, change the marketing, argue with the narrative, you know, argue with the copy, argue with the design. And everyone's cheering when it goes well, and when it doesn't, it can be very lonely.
Right. Oh, I know. My very first business was a massive failure.
There you go, and a huge education.
Absolutely. Taught me incredible things. So a couple more questions regarding going and making something big happen. Yeah. So I love the principle of, like, first of all, you got to think stupid and think big, right? Like just going after something that even the mind can't potentially conceive.
Yep.
And then second, having the right crowd around you to support you. Now, let's talk, what are like 2 to 3 best practices of nuts and bolts of actually making it happen, right? So you have like this famous person that you want to go approach or somebody that's not in your league, right, that you need something from. You know, what are some best practices of like making that happen?
All right, perfect, great, love it. Tactics. The first thing we're going to do is basically the question you asked for number 2. All right, never put who you're going for on a pedestal. You can't communicate with them as an equal when the first thing you do is stuck them 10 foot above you.
I love this because this is actually something I actually preach. I say if somebody's above you, kick them in the knees first, and make sure that they know that you're on the same level, right? Like don't gawk at them, don't ask for an autograph, a selfie, or so. I love that is in alignment.
So we're aligned on answer number 2, but let's play with number 1. And let's make it a bit easier. We'll pick on you. All right. You're here for a short period in LA. Yep. All right. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're available tomorrow night. And I said, well, look, you know, why don't you and your boys come over to my house? I'm having a barbecue. Come on over to my house. And you say, great. What's the first question you ask me?
Where do you live?
If you don't know where I live, how the hell can you get there? So I give you my address. You've now got my address. You know where the barbecue is going to be. What's the second question you ask me?
What time?
What time? If you don't know what time it is, you could be late, you could be early. You know, you may miss the damn thing. It's at 8 o'clock. So you now know the location, you know the time. What's the third question?
Is there anything I can bring?
Fantastic. It took you 2 questions before you thought of me. Now, I always pick on a guy when I ask that question. Never the girls. Why? Because the girls always get it right. And I'm sure your missus is going to listen to this and go, you nutbag.
Yeah.
You should have.
Oh, yeah. She's always the person.
Oh, my God. You should have asked that question first. The girls always do that. In fact, I've been in these environments where the wife's been next door and she's elbowed him going, what could you bring? You've got to think about that whenever you enter into any relationship. If you're going to enter into a relationship with you, Russell Brunson, Dean Graziosi, any of these kind of people, what do you bring to the party?
Right.
Whenever you approach someone, that person you're approaching knows you want something. If you get a phone call tonight at 8:00, I don't care who it's from, you can guarantee the fact that they phoned you, they want something. It may be just your mum for a natter, but they want something.
Right.
You've got to find out what it is. Okay? So in which case, when you get into a relationship, that person knows you've reached out to them, knowing that you're trying to, they're like, what do you want? Mm-hmm. So you've got to step into that sandpit and go, hey, I know you've got a new book coming out. And I've been following you for years, and I love the impact you're creating. I've got a great pool. I've got a great distribution network. I'd love to see how I can help you distribute your book. Gary Vee says he's always free when he's got something to sell. Mm-hmm. So you can do that when you're walking up to Elon Musk, when you're walking up to Richard Branson, when you're walking up to Elton John, when you're walking up to a celebrity in your own high street, when you're walking up to someone you want to do a JV with.
Right.
What do you bring to the table? It may not be what they have. In fact, I hope it's not, because they need to be the complementing thing to the thing that you don't have.
Right.
But you should always think, what can I bring to it? It may be your enthusiasm. It may be, I've got 20 people behind me and they're really good at editing, and we can do a massive amount of digital presence and get what we're talking about with you out to a wider audience, which is going to help your personal brand. Would that be of interest? I'll give you a little thing. Florence, when I got the museum to actually shut down, and bearing in mind, British guy, can't speak Italian, got a museum to shut down.
That's remarkable.
All right? Not really.
It sounds remarkable.
It sounds remarkable. I picked up the phone, I did some Googling and did some checking up on this museum, because this was where my God, this is my stupid moment. This is my ridiculous. What can I? So I found out about the museum, and I found out that they had a gala coming up later on that year in October. And I checked up why they were doing the gala, and the proceeds went to repair the roof. So when I went in there and I said, hey, thank you very much for taking the time, I was doing a little bit of Googling around, and I noticed that you've got a gala coming up at the end of the year. That's a lot of effort putting galas on, isn't it? Have you done many? We haven't done many. Oh, what is the purpose of the gala? The gala's for the roof. Well, why do you need a new roof? And they went, well, we've got all of this work in here. You don't realize it is not a normal roof. It's got to be protected against the climate, not just the wind and the rain, but the temperature, and we've got to protect it against fire. So it's not your normal roof. I said, that sounds expensive. They said, are you kidding? They went into the expense. I said, oh, that's amazing. How would you like me to be able to cover a quarter of that before you've even printed your first flyer? Would that help? Mm. Now they're only thinking, well, of course it would help. How do we get him to do that? So you've got to turn up. In that situation, I had shown, not that I wasn't turning up going, how much is it going to cost me? I was now putting a tag to something that they needed to achieve. I was finding a solution to that problem. And that problem was they needed to get this roof done. Well, I'm going to help you with a major chunk of that before you've even printed your first flyer.
And, I think where a lot of people go wrong is they want to help the person that they're approaching. And instead of doing the research and presenting something, they actually ask, hey, is there any way I can help you?
Oh, don't you hate that?
It's the worst. Yeah. Because now you're asking me to do work to figure out how you can serve me, right? Because like in this particular example, if you went to them and you're like, hey, is there anything I can do to help you so that I can get this in return, right? They'd be like, no, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why? No, we're not going to shut down this this museum, and we don't need anything. Meanwhile, not even thinking about the roof because that's already covered by the gala.
Yeah.
Right. So there's not even a need or a pain, but you, and this is classic sales, right? Like, you identified the pain that they didn't even know that they were currently in. Yeah. Right? Like, they knew that they needed to fix the roof, but it was already being fixed in their mind, right? And so you helped identify that, hey, putting on a gala is going to be extremely expensive and painful and everything else. Let me help you, and this is how I'm going to do it. I love that.
I just poked the Bruce. There's a guy called Jeff Moore that always turns around and says, why has you helping me now got to be my problem?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I've had people that have texted me before, they've DM'd and they've gone, hey, how can I help you? And I've gone, well, the dog took a turd this morning. If you could come over and clean up the grass, I'd really appreciate it. Well, that's not what I meant. Well, then be more specific.
Right.
You know? So
I hate cold DMs. Yeah. They're like, hey, it's really cool what you're doing. What kind of business are you in? What? Are you kidding me?
Those are the best.
All you had to do was read 2 sentences on my profile, and you would have known what I do. And you have the gall to ask me that question as the first thing. Like, get out of here.
No, that's classic link. Don't love LinkedIn for that. That's usually the biggest culprit. But no, I actually. But that comes down to the beginning again.
Yeah.
Intuition, and those couple of seconds of research. Now, from you getting out of the Uber to walking into the bar, you can Google people with more accuracy than NASA had in the 80s. And you can find out things. I'll tell you a true story about how I got involved with the Elton John Foundation.
Yeah.
Elton doesn't run the whole thing. He has people that run it. Yep. So who's running that? That's your first Google. You get those answers. And then I found out the person that did it. I went along to the event, all right? And this is the class. You want tactics? Google someone and then don't read the information. Click on images. Okay? Now, if you've got a ton of images where they're hanging around with motorbikes, you can guess that they like motorbikes. If they're hanging around with horses, equestrian. So I found out that one of the guys there had actually done a couple of articles for shoes. He collected handmade shoes, not sneakers, handmade shoes from leathers from all over the planet. And he had his favorite guy in Italy that would then construct. He would buy the leather and he would construct the shoe. And I found out about this. So I went up to him.
This is one of Elton John's right-hand guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I paid for a ticket. I went to the party. I saw him go to the bar. I left my table. I went to the bar, stood next to him. Now, of course, I'm a big lad. He's feeling all important because he's running the event.
Right.
If I had gone, hey, this is a great event, I'd have lost it straight off the bat. Okay? If I'd have come in with like, you're so-and-so. If I'd have done any of that, I'd have lost it. So I'm stood next to him. He's ordering his drink. I'm waiting for my turn. I looked down. I went,
nice shoes.
Those are some wicked shoes. Where'd you get those shoes? And he went, sorry. I went, what colour are they? And they were like this weird purpley that as the light was catching as he walked, I could see this. And he went, you like these shoes? I said, I don't know if I can wear them. I said, but they're bloody great shoes. And so we entered into this whole conversation about shoes.
It's amazing.
And then I actually said to him, I said, look, I'll go and make that call. So, look, it's a party, it's busy. Let me go. I'd love to have a coffee with you one day and just chat. You seem like a cool guy. And I took his number. All right. Now, a lot of you out there will be going, oh, you were just after something. There's a way to play the game. You flirt, you tease, you seduce, you get, dating. Bring back dating. So I got this conversation going with him. I texted him about a couple of weeks later and I went, hey, I'm in the area. Should we grab a coffee? I was in LA and he turned around and he went, what, you in New York? I thought, crap, and I'm not. And I went.
And you're like, on my way.
I just said to him, I said, Tuesday? And he went, yeah, great, let's do it. I hung up and went, Claire, I'm off to New York. And we booked a ticket and we went off to. And the funny thing is, here's the dumb thing. I put that story in my first book. And he read it. And he contacted me and he went, that was me. You went after me. You actually targeted me. And I said to him, look, I felt that a relationship with you would be so beneficial to us both. I wasn't going to leave it to chance. Does that offend you?
And what do you say to that?
He was like, no, not at all. And then I had a friend of mine contact me. He went, I don't want to mention the guy's name. He's like, he's just told this story about how he was featured in your book.
He was excited.
He was over the moon. I had valued that relationship. How could he be offended?
Right. Somebody that drops everything, buys a plane ticket, and heads out just to make it to a coffee.
I felt there was so much value
Yeah.
and potential in a relationship that benefited everybody for 8 years. So, no, I wasn't going to leave it to chance.
It's amazing. You know, I've had different examples in my career of these different principles you're talking about. Right? There was one that I was down at a boxing convention with a bunch of professional boxers. Michael Moore. I don't know if you knew him.
Yeah, know the name.
Yeah, Michael Moore. He'd only ever lost to George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. Big dude, right?
Great people to lose to.
Yeah, and he was a world champion and whatnot. And I got introduced to him, and I immediately fanboyed him, right? Like, oh, you're great. Will you sign my boxing glove and everything? And he was turned off, right? Just immediately. But then, whatever reason, we had a mutual friend there, and we continued the conversation. And then it got to the fact that he loved guns and I love guns, and we started talking guns. And he's like, dude, why didn't you start with this, right? Treating me normal and talking about normal things. He hated to be fanboyed. And that's actually when it finally clicked for me for the first time in my life. People hate to be fanboyed, right? And that you have to treat them, put them on your level, talk about things that are important to them, right? Like what you're talking about, doing a little bit of research and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's just interesting because you've taken and you've created a formula of what works. And I'm thinking back through my life, yes, I remember when I kind of learned that principle. But
here's the thing, and you know it. And then whatever happened in your life, you diluted it.
Right.
There's nothing that I've spoken about, and there's nothing that I could teach you that you wouldn't sit there and go, but I already know that. But I just stopped doing it. You know, we stopped paying attention to the little things. Yeah. We stopped paying attention to the idiosyncrasies of what you talk about, your favorite music, how you turn up, how you handle yourself. We go past that now. And because we're in a world of transaction and instant gratification, if I can't connect with you in 2 seconds, I can't connect. Well, any relationship's going to take time.
Right.
And that's what we've lost out on now. You know, people don't want to go on a date now. They want to hit Tinder. You know, get the whole
swipe, get
it out of the way. I'm not going to buy them lunch. Let's get it going. So, you know, we're into that kind of society.
Yeah.
But I do believe it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And I do believe that those people that have got that unfair advantage value relationships. And this is something you still can't order on Amazon and you can't download an app for. It's a muscle that you have to learn, focus, and build. And you had it. You just got to revive it.
I love that, man. Incredible value brought today. I appreciate you so much, Steve. Where's the best place for my listeners to follow you on Instagram? Where's the best spot?
Steve D. Sims. D for dashing and only one M in Sims. I'm on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, all the usual stuff. Probably most vocal on Instagram, but nice. Steve D. Sims is my website. But I will give you something for free with no hooks. If you go to goforstupid.com, I actually did my audio in a studio and we ended up with all of these videos from it. So we just listed the entire book up there on video that they can get for free. So
goforstupid.com.
They get all the videos for free.
So if you're hearing this or you're watching this, goforstupid.com. You get his newest book on audio.
Correct.
Awesome. For free. Absolutely free. That's incredible value. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate you joining us in the studio. Until next time.